Let's go straight across to our correspondents, Abhishek Bhalla, who tracks the Defence Ministry for us, and Geeta Menon, who tracks the Ministry of External Affairs, for joining us. Abhishek Bhalla, first to you, because 3 people confirmed dead, 3 casualties tragically, but we are told that the situation remains tense in the area. Can you tell us reports also possibly of some more soldiers who are still missing at the moment?
Rajdeep, the situation in the Galwan region is extremely volatile since last evening. Yes, there is a confirmation of 3 deaths on the Indian side, but there are reports coming in that the casualty figures could be much higher, even though the Indian Army or the Ministry of External Affairs has not given any number to the one that they gave earlier. Also, sources in New Delhi confirming that there are casualties on the Chinese side. But once again, there's no such confirmation from the Chinese side, even though the official Indian Army statement did say, the MEA statement also did say that there have been casualties on both the sides. Even as these developments take place, the security establishment in Delhi keeping a very close watch on all the developments that are taking place in the Galwan region.
Okay, so that is, of course, the concern that a few more soldiers could have gone missing. Now, amidst all this, Geeta Mon, the MEA has issued a statement that virtually suggests that China broke the agreement or the attempt that was being made to de-escalate tensions. Is there any attempt being made for any back-channel diplomacy even at this stage, given what's happened in the last 24 hours?
Well, the situation is really serious, Rajdeep, and yes, there have been engagements at the foreign ministry level. Ambassador Vikram Misri, who is based in Beijing, met with Liu Zhaohui, who is the vice foreign minister and also served as ambassador here during the Doklam crisis. So is also known as an India hand. He was called in, requested for a meeting, and so Vikram Misri went and met him. A protest was lodged by the Chinese side, as the Chinese foreign ministry put out, saying that India tried to provoke the Chinese forces, but India continues to maintain, Rajdeep, that the status quo was being changed by China, and therefore that led to the kind of skirmishes that we've seen, leading to casualties, which is the first time since 1975 and the first time since 1962 in the Ladakh sector. So a very serious situation right now, and like we've experienced during Doklam, Rajdeep, unless and until the political leadership comes in, steps in, resolution at army military level seems unlikely at this point in time.
A resolution at the army military level seems unlikely, a need for a political involvement at some stage. Let's therefore take some of the questions that we're going to raise, and we'll be joined by 2 army chiefs in a moment, former army chiefs. But how should India be responding? Is India trying to alter the line of is China trying to alter rather the line of actual control in Ladakh? Is a further escalation likely? These are, of course, some of the troubling questions that are coming given the nature of what has happened today or last night on the LAC. I'm joined at the moment by Ajai Shukla. Ajay is a former colonel and someone who's been closely monitoring this situation, warning about the possibility of this escalating for a while. Nirupama Rao, former foreign secretary and former envoy to China, joins us. We'll also be joined in a moment by General Bikram Singh, former army chief, and General VP Malik, another former army chief, will also join us. But first you, Ajay Shukla, because there's a sense that the situation on the ground could be even worse than what we are hearing at the moment officially. What are you picking up from your sources, given that you've been warning that the situation could go out of control for a while?
Well, this face-off, while sort of sad and regrettable, has been on the cards. And let me start by paying tribute to the Indian Army soldiers and the officer who laid down their lives here. The situation, as you rightly said, is worse than what the government has put out so far. The number of casualties are higher. We are hearing double-digit casualties, though I cannot confirm it yet. It's only source-based information. We're hearing that the Chinese acted with extreme brutality, that there were incidences of their pushing Indian soldiers off the mountains, and they were in much larger numbers, so they could get away with it. But the question that really arises, Rajdeep, is how have we arrived in this situation? How have we trusted the Chinese to the extent where when they walked into our territory, we're just holding talks with them. We're believing that an agreement at a military-to-military level will be honored. It's been mishandled from the word go. The government has been reluctant to acknowledge that there were Chinese soldiers on Indian territory. Then they began talking about disengagement, which in a way tacitly accepted that there were Chinese soldiers on Indian territory. And now they're talking about after disengagement, there was a clash. I don't know how there's a clash when P2 forces are disengaging. What we're hearing from our sources is that China continues to hold on to much of the territory that they've been gained, and it doesn't seem likely that they're in a hurry to leave right now.
What I want to understand, though, from you, Colonel Shukla, is that, last weekend we were told that de-escalation was going on, that particularly in the Galwan Valley, the military commanders had met and there was to be de-escalation. This certainly, far from being de-escalation, seems to be an act of aggression and provocation. So what happened to de-escalation?
I'm not certain that China has engineered this entire incident with so much of care and so much of planning only to de-escalate after one round of talks. They have come with an intent, with purpose. This is completely unusual from anything that has happened in the past in terms of the areas where they've come into, which has traditionally been peaceful, the numbers that they've come in, which is in the thousands, the brutality which they've displayed, and finally this whole business of talking about de-escalation but actually continuing to sit in the positions that you've occupied. It's a different pattern of behavior from the Chinese, and we need to take cognizance of it and to re-evaluate and question some of our traditional assumptions.
What explains this, Nirupama Rao? What explains what the Chinese have done at the moment? A country which is beset at the moment with the center of the COVID crisis suddenly seems to have wanted to alter the line of actual control come April. This has been, as Ajay seems to suggest, a well thought of plan on the Chinese side. What do you think is responsible for this Chinese belligerence expansionism?
First of all, Rajdeep, I would also like to add my voice in tribute to the Colonel and the two Jawans who laid down their lives in this awfully tragic and gruesome encounter on Monday night. Now, you're asking me about what explains the Chinese attitude. I think this is a question regarding the sources of Chinese conduct that occupies the minds of a number of countries today. Everybody, especially those who had earlier called for an engagement with China, for instance, the United States, they're all wondering whether there is need for a radical reassessment of Chinese aims and Chinese strategy. And I think that question is equally posed to us in India today. Now, why should they have aggravated or stirred up this situation along the line of actual control is the question for which we seek an answer today. Over the last 1.5 months or so, the situation along the line of actual control in the Western sector, might as well call it the Western Front in many ways, has been escalating. And we had hoped that the meeting at the level of the two armies on the 6th of June would lead to some de-escalation, and all the reports coming out of that meeting suggested that there were attempts ongoing to de-escalate, to bring down the tensions, and to reduce the levels of confrontation. But something went awfully, tragically, dreadfully wrong on Monday night. And I'm not here to do a post-mortem because I'm not privy to all the facts on the ground. So I want to jump to conclusions. But our side and our soldiers have lost their precious lives, and this is a tragedy. And it is also a very worrisome juncture in China relations, because where are we headed to? For 45 years, we had held the peace along this line of actual control in all the sectors of the border, as is proverbially and popularly claimed. Not a shot was fired on this line for these 45 years. But that situation has changed forever, I believe, as a result of the incident on Monday night. And as we look
let me come let me come back to you in a moment to try and still understand as to therefore what are our options. Are they diplomatic? Are they military? But I want to go to General Bikram Singh, someone, former army chief, who's also worked in the area and patrolled in the area, commanded in the area. And I want to understand from you, General Singh, how do you see the events of Monday night? Is there something that happened? You know, it is too early to speculate about the sequence of events, but the fact is we've lost 3 soldiers and we could well have lost more. What explains what happened according to you?
Rajdeep, let me start by saluting the martyrs and conveying my condolences to the battalion, to the families of the martyrs. I think I would not go into the incident, what exactly happened, but yes, one thing is for sure that China means business this time. You know, we've had face-offs earlier which have got resolved at the military level, at the combined initiatives at the diplomatic and military levels in the past. But the way various statements are emanating from the military headquarters, the highest headquarters, facing our northern borders, from Beijing, it's apparent that China means business and they are not going to disengage from the way they are at the moment deployed and what has happened last night. I don't think it's going to be an easy disengagement. And perhaps we need to be prepared for a long haul.
Now, what does that mean, General? What does that mean exactly when you say prepared for a long haul? Does that mean that the Chinese have, in a sense, as is being suggested, attempted to alter the LAC in the Galwan Valley and are occupying land which actually we believe is part of Indian territory? Is that the business that they mean at the moment? Do they want to alter the LAC?
Look, Rajdeep, the point is that they have given us a situation which has to be dealt with. The ball is in our court at the moment. Let's be very clear. They have given statements that we have come into your area and we have the right up to the Galwan Valley. That's what is coming out from there. In other words, they have stated their intent that, look, we are not going back. So when I say a long haul, I'm talking in terms of how do we deal with it. You see, it has been in the politico-military domain for a while. I would say since the 6th of June, when the talks at the corps commanders level did not materialize and we did not have a disengagement taking place. In fact, one could sense at that point of time that there was something serious. Yesterday's incident definitely substantiates the contention that yes, things are not all that, hunky-dory as we've had in the past. And China has earlier agreed, to honor the Border Defense Cooperation Agreement and other 3 agreements which we have signed since 1993, honoring the code of conduct, honoring the rules of engagement and falling back. So this is for certain. So what I'm saying is when I say long haul in the methodology of its resolution, are we going to continue to use our military channels and diplomatic channels and political leaderships engaging the Chinese in our initiative, in our desire, or I would say to deal with the situation amicably, or are we going to up the ante and perhaps look China in the eyes at the operational and strategic level? So what I'm saying is that the use of force, I do not feel is an option, because when you go in for use of force at the national level, there are factors that are taken into account. Like, for example, it's a last chance. It's the last option, the last resort for force is used. Before that, you try your diplomatic and political channels.
So you're saying we still haven't reaced that stage. Despite yesterday's incident, we still haven't reached that stage where we have to respond. Yes.
Right. The other thing is proportionality. Please remember this. When you use force, there is a factor of proportionality when we use force. So are we going to jump from this tactical incident where, mind you, our soldiers have also displayed valor? As per the reports coming in, we have killed 5 Chinese. So we cannot say that our people were timid. Our people have hit back. It is just very unfortunate that we lost a commanding officer in 2 other ranks.
Can I?
But the point is, there is a room still, I feel, and I suppose decision is now going to be taken at the highest level, perhaps in the CCS, as to what is going to be our strategy to deal with this imbroglio now.
Okay, but you're saying that any military option A has to observe the rules of proportionality and, of course, be a last resort. Ajai Shukla, I want to come to you in a moment, but I want you to see this map, Ajay, and also our viewers, that my colleague Rahul Kawal has done so that you know this area exactly. Rahul gives you a sense of what's happening there on the ground, and then Ajay, I want you to respond to this because you can tell us what could have gone wrong. Take a look at exactly where this incident happened in which our soldiers lost their lives.
So this is the Galwan River. This is the Indian road. Why the Chinese deployments were problematic and why we were demanding a pullback was because the Chinese had positioned themselves on the ridge lines, and as you do that, you overlook the Indian bases and you overlook this road, which is the DSDBO road. And overlooking the road is problematic militarily because you can then dominate from the heights. You can stop any Indian cavalcade that may be heading towards the general area of Daulat Beg Oldi, which is also called subsector north. So therefore, the Indians had asked the Chinese to pull back. The Chinese had promised that there would be a pullback. Late in the evening, we sent out a patrol to see whether the Chinese had pulled back or not. That's when that patrol came in contact with the Chinese deployment, which was on the other side. They told us they pulled back. We'd gone to see whether they'd pulled back, and that's where things started getting really violent.
Ajai Shukla, therefore, is it possible that the Chinese have betrayed us in terms of having agreed at the military commanders level a de-escalation? Our patrol troop goes to, in a sense, patrol the area, and the Chinese, far from having pulled back, actually use the opportunity to attack us. Is that possible?
Yes, that's entirely possible, Rajdeep. It is, in fact, what would appear to be the case because it's quite obvious that a smaller number of Indian troops have been ambushed or have come into contact with a much larger Chinese number and have therefore been overwhelmed, and then a large number of them have lost their lives. The question that comes in is that why have we been so trusting of the Chinese? Right from the start, in the way that they have come into Indian territory, there has been clearly an intent to sort of capture Indian territory, to pull the wool over the eyes of the Indian soldiers and so on. Having seen the Chinese come in, why are we so keen or so credible in believing that they would go out, without sort of a murmur? I think that there is clearly something more to what happened than we really.
You don't think, sir? Sorry to interrupt, Ajay. You don't think that there was some agreement at the level of the commanders, but the local officer in charge was responsible for what happened? You don't think that this is miscommunication? You see this as a planned operation?
I think it's clearly a planned operation by the Chinese. There is seldom miscommunication within the Indian Army. It's a very professional army. It has sort of manicured procedures and so on for passing on information. And when a patrol is sent out, it's properly briefed, and there is sort of a clear intent and a clear aim behind that patrol. So I think that clearly the Chinese have gone back on what they committed, if they committed. And I'm sort of also bringing out the point that we have been all along too ready to believe the Chinese, to trust in them, even as they have staged an operation to occupy our territory, and perhaps that was a mistake.
You know, that, Nirupama, Rao, brings the question, are we too trusting? You've had Prime Minister Modi, who's had a personal equation with President Xi. No other Indian Prime Minister has visited China as often as Prime Minister Modi. Both as Chief Minister and as Prime Minister, he's visited China 9 times. He claims to have a personal chemistry with President Xi. They've gone to Mahabalipuram. They've been on a swing in Ahmedabad. These were images that were not seen in the past. Have we been betrayed by the Chinese once again? Or did the Prime Minister invest too much in his personal relationship, forgetting what could be the ground reality?
Now, Rajdeep, reaching out diplomatically to seek a greater degree of normalization in the relationship is a perfectly legitimate thing to do. So I don't think either of the two governments or the leaders can be questioned as regards what they do on that front. But the basic question about trust, about the levels of trust between the two countries, I think the quotient of trust has always been at below par, has been at level, given the fact, especially where we in India are concerned, we have always had the outlook that China is an adversary. all said and done.
But things seem to have plummeted even further in the last couple of years. Whether it's China's open support to Pakistan and allegedly terror emanating from Pakistan, China's expansionist role we've seen in the South China Sea, we seem to be seeing a very different China in the last few years. Even more.
I agree, and that's why I said in my earlier remarks to mention that everybody today is talking of the need for a radical reassessment of where the Chinese are coming from.
Yes.
Because the whole, bide your time, lie low attitude that Deng Xiaoping had recommended has been set aside. Xi Jinping is not talking of the peaceful rise of China any longer. The Chinese dream, as he calls it, is basically to make China number one, the sole superpower, and to graft onto the world order Chinese characteristics. So there's no doubt about that. And I think a country like India can ill afford to ignore these trend lines. But what I want to say is that there are a number of movable pieces in this situation today. We don't know the whole sequence of what happened on Monday night. The result is there for us to see. Why did it happen? How did it happen? People say all this talk of differing perceptions of the line of actual control are a lot of hogwash. I would beg to differ. We don't have a jointly agreed line of actual control with China. In the middle sector, it's relatively well known because the areas of dispute are somewhat less than in the other sectors. But I must be honest and say that there is no jointly agreed perception of the line of actual control, and I'll continue to say that. Now, what happened in Galwan Valley?
Yes.
The Chinese are claiming it to be on their side of the line. We have every reason to feel and to say that this is on our side of the line. There is obviously a dispute here, and that dispute has turned into this conflagration.
But the fact is that for 30 years, the fact is from 1975, the peace has been held. We've had in Depsang, we've had in Doklam, we've had our difference in perception, but it's not turned into the kind of bloody conflict that we had yesterday. That's the worry. General Manik is also joining us. General Manik, how worried are you about what happened last night? Could this be the start, a trigger for something worse? That's the fear that some people have, that things spiral out of control because no one now can really control what's happening on the LAC, it appears.
There is no doubt that this is a grave situation, much graver than what we imagined day before yesterday when we heard that there's going to be disengagement from both sides. Now, what we have seen last night was no disengagement, rather hitting each other and killing. It's unfortunate that we lost one commanding officer and two. Yes, Rajdeep, it can get escalated. If it is left to the armed forces on both sides, it can escalate because nobody wants to take people. People not only are tense on the border at the moment, but they are also angry on both sides, I'm sure. So, but the other side of the situation is that today you have real-time information going from the front right up to the cabinet. And I'm sure that people are monitoring what is going on by in the CCS also.
But they've been monitoring this with due regard, sir. They've been monitoring this for months. It's not something that happened only on Monday night. This has been building up for the last couple of months. The likes of Ajai Shukla have been writing about it. And the government's attitude has been either to live in denial or dismissal or say we are engaging with the Chinese, the dialogue is going on, there is de-escalation. The fact is there is neither disengagement or de-escalation. That's the worry that we have, that this is a China which is neither disengaging or de-escalating, it seems.
No, apparently, today's statement also says that we were to disengage.
Yes.
Now, there can be only two reasons why this disengagement has not taken place. Firstly, it could be that the Western Command of the PLA, they are not accepting whatever has gone on at the Corps Commander level or even at the Joint Secretary level diplomatically. A second thing could be that the proper orders have not been received at the lower level from the Chinese side. I tend to feel that it is the earlier situation that I mentioned, that the Western Command of PLA does not want disengagement, and they had come prepared to occupy the position, which is what they have done.
Exactly. That's the fear, General Singh. General Bikram Singh, that's the fear, that here is China, which has come into the Galwan Valley, probably crossed into what we believe is our side of the LAC, and now refuses to leave the land which we believe is occupied or restore the status quo ante as it existed pre-April. Now that is the concern.
Absolutely, Rajdeep. And more worrying is, the statements that have come out, as I said earlier, which allude to the fact that I think China is going to dig its heels in this area. They have said it belongs to us. And I do not think that they are going to disengage. That's what I feel. So I think the situation, and I'm basing it on the indications that have emerged till now.
Right.
For all things might improve because, at the diplomatic level, at the political level, when we engage China, perhaps there may be an amicable solution which may emerge and China may decide to dealing. But given the statements that have emanated from the military headquarters, I feel they mean business. They are not going to dealing very soon, disengage very soon. And I think they are there to stay. So the challenge for us is, how are we going to deal with it? Are we going to continue to...
So I'm going to ask you that. I'm going to ask all four of you that one by one, a minute each to all. How do we therefore deal? Ajai Shukla, you tell us first, how do you believe therefore we should deal with it, given the fact that it appears that the Chinese are digging their heels in?
Well, first of all, this incident has served one purpose, tragic though it is, and that is to focus attention on what the Chinese are doing and their apparent intention to occupy Indian territory on a more or less permanent basis and to change the alignment of the line of actual control. I accept Mrs. Rao's statement that it's a disputed line and nobody knows where it's run. But the fact is that we know where we were patrolling up to all these years, and now we suddenly can't patrol there any longer. So there clearly is a change in the status quo. I think the most important thing is the government must come clean. It must put the facts before the country. It must take the opposition into confidence. This is a national crisis, and a national crisis is not handled by the government on a part-time basis or on a party basis. It must bring the opposition into its confidence, and they must have a joint solution to this problem. Whatever it is, the use of armed force to evict the Chinese intruders, if that's what the country wants and that's the mood of the nation, that's what needs to be done. And I don't see why we can evict the Pakistanis intruders from Kargil, but have a different parameter and yardstick when it comes to the Chinese.
Do you believe that's possible? So you believe that we've got to take the opposition into confidence, be transparent with the nation, and take even the ultimate option of forcing the intruders out like we did in Kargil. Am I correct, Colonel Shukla?
Yes, absolutely. To rule out the use of force at this stage would be completely premature. We need to discuss this more thoroughly.
General Malik, do you also believe that? That since you were, of course, in charge when Kargil happened, can we do that with the Chinese?
Look, the parameters during Kargil were quite different. And the strategy that we adopted there was also something quite different to what we can do here. But here, I think the decision has now to be taken by the CCS, whether they want to keep it localized or they want to escalate it. Now, if they want to escalate it, I'm sure Army is adequately prepared to escalate it. But then you know what can happen in escalation, and there may be some win and there may be some lose. And of course, it is not in the economic interest of
So is your recommendation to keep it localized for now?
I think so. I think it would be worthwhile to keep it localized and try and gain as much territory in the local situation like we did in Kargil.
So, but either way that involves some element of conflict. General Singh, you've told me on this program you believe any kind of military conflict must be the last resort. Do you believe, therefore, that we need to be patient and restrained?
No, there's a limit to that, Rajdeep. We cannot afford to continue, for too long a period. After all, you see, this is in the context of national interests. After all, they are paramount. So what I wish to bring out is that let me start by saying, with regard to the options, that I would say that war would not suit both the countries. I think it would be something, it would be a retrograde step in the aspirations of both the nations of emerging as a global power. As a regional power, we both are. But I think emerging as a global power, it is going to derail our initiatives, number one. So it doesn't actually at the strategic level fall into the right kind of a strategy for both the nations, number one. Number two, we got to see why China did this. And that was, I think, covered in detail in your last discussion that we had. There is, I would say, an endeavor to deflect the attention of the local constituency in China, to perhaps eclipse the inadequacies and drawbacks in the governance by Xi Jinping. And other
very quickly, sir, your solution, therefore. I'm running very quickly your solution. What is your solution?
What I'm saying the solution is that the endeavor should be at the tactical level. We need to go in for, if required, definitely for a quid pro quo kind of an action, tit for tat kind of action in case required. It could be in the vicinity, it could be in the central sector, it could be in the eastern sector. But it depends all on what the political end state we are seeking from this.
Okay.
Because that is what is going to govern the entire situation. The ball has gone out of the military court. Military is absolutely primed to take on any situation, any directions given by the government.
You're giving an important point. You're saying it's gone out of the military's court, it's now in the political court. Therefore, let me conclude with you, Nirupama Rao. How do you see the stakes? Do you believe that we should be escalating this, or should we be looking to diffuse this as we did in the past in Doklam and Depsang, even if it takes a couple of months?
Well, listening to all of the commentators on the show, I was just thinking of, 3 or 4 points that could emerge as I call it, trend lines in this situation. I think the first conclusion is obviously that tension is at a very high level today, and not only in the Galwan Valley, but along the line of actual control. And that is the worrisome point. There is no guarantee that this tension cannot erupt in other areas, in other sectors.
I have to stop you for a moment because we are getting news that the Indian casualty could be as high as 20. The Indian casualty has now been confirmed to as high as 20, may increase. This is the terrible news that's coming in at the moment. Army sources now confirming to India today that 20 soldiers could be killed, as high as 20. Now this puts a completely different perspective, doesn't it, Ajai Shukla? If the numbers have risen now from 3 to 20, what does that mean, Ajay?
Yeah, the number of 3 was outdated pretty early in the day. I've been reporting 10 to 13. But 20 is a higher figure than even I've heard. It just means that the levels of brutality and violence the Chinese perpetrated are sort of completely reprehensible. It means that they are trying to send a signal of striking fear into the Indians. I think it makes the case even stronger for retaliatory action. The Chinese are operating on the assumption that the Indians will back off. And
you believe from your ground knowledge we are in a position to retaliate, am I correct, and keep it localized?
We are in a position to retaliate. The Indian Army can generate local superiority at any number of places along the line of action control.
Nirupama Rao, sorry I interrupted you, but does this put a different perspective on what we said if the numbers are as high as 20?
No, it just points to the fact that the situation is alarming, and it's dreadful that this should have happened. I really mourn for the deaths of those soldiers and their martyrdom.
Does it put more pressure on the political establishment though?
Say this, it's all very well for us to talk in a TV studio about escalation and, the levels of hysteria I see in the public space. That's all very well. But let us leave it to the government to take a considered, calm and deliberate decision on what we need to do, because they are the ones who determine how this goes. Let me also finish. The diplomatic front has been opened, and we need to shift it into high gear. It's absolutely necessary.
How do you do that?
Concrete disengagement and conflict, in my view, is the last resort. It's not what we need at this time.
Should Prime Minister Modi be picking up the phone tonight and trying to speak to President Xi?
Well, that I leave to Prime Minister Modi. I think we should first explore, the situation on the diplomatic front. Ambassador Misri has met Vice Minister Luo in Beijing. We'll have to see what transpired in those discussions. The important thing, as I said again and again, have the knowledge of the history of this dispute always in the background when you look at the problem.
Sure. Let me get two quick. Sure. Let me get two quick points, just 30 seconds each from the two generals. General Malik, why don't you go first and tell me, now that the casualty toll, according to sources, is 20, does the pressure increase to retaliate?
Yes, I think so. There was tension, there was a lot of anger, and now apparently both tension as well as anger is much more. So the situation is not grave, it is now alarming. And
General Singh, do you also believe? General Singh, do you also believe retaliation? The pressure will be there. Nirupama Rao is saying, be careful, don't be carried away by hysteria, don't get carried away by public pressure or the numbers. Be careful.
Well, Rajdeep, this definitely is going to impact the national morale. And to keep that up, let's be very clear, the government will have to take a call. And I think as a former chief, I would not like to talk of the military option here. I think let's keep the doors open at the diplomatic level, military level. But yes, we have to get back. If lost 20 people, we've got to take 20 lives of PLA. There's no way that we sit back and we allow them to kill our people and do nothing about it.
20 lives of the PLA. Either way, that effectively means some element of escalation, therefore. That will mean some element of escalation. That's something we're going to have to live with, I guess.
Look, if this has happened on account of the some kind of a failure, then there has got to be a political kind of an apology, which I feel the nation will not accept. Nation is going to be agitated. Officers definitely are agitated because I've had a large number of people contacting me. They would definitely like something happening. But then the point is, when we take some action, that action should be based on our own military might and not based on perhaps some kind of a understanding with any of the great powers which we have promised, like, for example, United States. We've seen what Trump did, when the whole thing started. He wanted to mediate. So we should be looking at our own might when we take a call. And call is taken based on the military might, our comprehensive national power, the cascading effect of the decision that the government is going to take, its impact on economy. And so all those things are going to be seen. But definitely, yes, for national morale, something has to be done.
Something has to be done. The question is, what will that something be? Either way, at the moment, clearly the situation is now alarming, as is being told to us by our former generals and my panelists today. Thank you all very much for joining us on a very educative debate, or discussion as I should call it, on that situation. Our thoughts, of course, with our martyrs, our soldiers tonight. Thank you all very much, though, for joining me here.
Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.